Hello, I'm Peg White, and I'm with the ministry at St. Paul's Catholic Church in Pensacola, Florida, called The Wise Woman Builds Her Home. This ministry is based on that Proverbs from 14:1, and there is no greater place that we need to exercise wisdom, would you think, than in conflict in our marriages. We all know conflict is there. It's inevitable. We used to laugh and say where two or more are joined, even in His name, there is conflict. But there is good news, in that the Word of God tells us how to handle it. So let's begin, and this will be part one. There are two parts to this. They're quite short. So please join us for the first part now, and then for the second part, where we will give some very practical tips on how to resolve conflict. I want you to know that my remarks are based a good bit on this book, The Peacemaker, by Ken Sande. It is an excellent book, probably one of the most challenging I have ever read, and I think you will find it too. It can guide you from start to finish through a conflict. So, what is conflict? Actually, I think you would agree with this definition. It's a difference in opinion or purpose that frustrates someone else's goals or desires. That's pretty accurate if you ask me. You know, there's such a need for wisdom to resolve conflict, to bring about a godly way to handle it. But look what the book of James has to say about the cause of conflict. Where do the wars and where do the conflicts among you come from? Is it not from your passions that make war within your members? You covet, but you do not possess. You kill and envy, but you cannot obtain. You fight, wage war. You do not possess because you do not ask. I'm not sure how you feel about that. At first, when I read that, I thought, no, that can't be right. It's his fault. It's not mine. What do you mean, from my own passions that make war within me? In other words, from my own heart comes a lot of it. And ladies, that's based on our attitudes a lot of times. We carry those attitudes into everything, especially conflict. So often there is good reason for what James says here. But we'll talk about that a little more as we come along. There are actually three ways that we respond to conflict. We're either a peacemaker, a peacebreaker, or a peace faker. Now, I want you to think something in your childhood, an incident in your childhood that lets you know which one of these you are. When we were first asked that about these three ways to respond to conflict, I leaned back and thought about an incident in my childhood and started grinning. My husband says, you've already got one. I said, oh yes, that's easy. I said, I'm a peacemaker. He said, tell me your conflict. And I did, and here it is. When I was a little girl, probably about 6 or 7, somebody in the family cut into great-grandma's quilt. Well, obviously my mom was livid, so upset, and she wanted to know, which one of you did this? No one owned up. So then she says, well, your father will handle this. Common thing we do, right, ladies? Anyway, Daddy came home and he says, okay, I'm lining you up. You're going to tell me which one of you did this, because if you don't, I'm going to spank you and put you to bed. And I thought, oh my. So I immediately raised my hand and said I did it. And my husband said, but you didn't, did you? I said, no, see what a wonderful peacemaker I am? And he goes, hun, that's peace faking. And I thought, he's right. Oh my goodness. And I thought back all the times I've actually done this very thing. Peace at any cost, peace at any price, shuffle things under the rug. Just let the outcome be good. I've met many women who tell me, gee, I've done the same thing. So ladies, you need to know which one of these you normally are. Of course, you want to lean toward being a peacemaker and being wise. Because, as Proverbs says, a wise woman builds her home. But guess what the second half of that is? The wise one not the wise one. The foolish tears hers down with her own hands. We don't want to be foolish. Let's take a look at the slippery slope. As you can see, we've got 3 responses there. On the left, you have the escape responses. On the top, you have the peacemaking responses. And on the right, you have the attack responses. Now, we're going to talk more about what this translates into. But for now, just take a look. Obviously, you want to stay on the top. But it's quite slippery. We find ourselves sliding right on down, either into escaping by denying. You never do that? I do it all the time. Denying that there's even a problem. Or I go, I'm out of here. Before we've even had a chance to discuss it. Right? Not a good response. Or even as bad as suicide. Now go all the way to the right. That's attack. And that's where literally you assault. Assault is not always physical. It can be emotional. Something along those lines. Verbal assault. And it even can get to litigation, as we well know. And the worst, of course, is murder. So, but up on the top, what do we have? Well, we have the whole idea of overlooking or reconciling. You think, well, great, how do I do that? I'm glad you asked. We're going to be talking about that. There's also the idea of negotiation, mediation, arbitration. Those are more legal type things. We are going to concentrate, and that's what this book, The Peacemaker, does. It concentrates on how you can resolve conflicts successfully yourself. So, let's talk now about peacemaking, which, as you know, I didn't understand at first. This is where we focus on me, myself. We deny sometimes that there is a conflict. We cover right over the problem. We actually avoid the person if we think we can get away with it. We are peace at any price, pretending to forgive, and even keeping a list of offenses. And of course, there's litigation and divorce, or suicide, the worst. Peace breaking, how do we translate that? That's focusing on you. Nagging, harsh criticism, angry words, threatening. Let me back up just a little. You may be thinking, well, darn right I've got angry words. I'm mad. Well, that's true. We do get that way. But we need to be careful of that because the Lord calls us not to sin in our anger. So we want to learn how to deal with this right up front. So there's slander, physical abuse, and of course litigation and divorce, and murder. Peacemaking, what does that look like? That's where we focus on us. We overlook insignificant offenses. It's easy to do once you learn. When you think about it, you think, oh, I didn't need to bring that up. Really? Maybe you do. And sometimes if it's going to hinder your relationship with that person, whether that be your husband or a good friend or your sister, if it's going to interfere with your relationship, you can't overlook it. But ladies, there are many times we can overlook. In peacemaking, we don't shout and carry on. We make a date to discuss important personal or relational issues. Then there is confrontation. That's loving confrontation. And there is a way to learn how to do that as well. And confession, well, we all know about confession. We don't like it, but we need to confess when we know we're in the wrong. We don't like to do that, but it really, really helps when we do. Of course, you can negotiate substantive issues like money, property, or rights of this or that. It's one thing I want you to take away. Don't run away from conflict. You don't have to. You learn how to deal with it, because conflict is an opportunity to glorify God. And you know we are to glorify Him in everything we do. Waking, sleeping, eating, drinking, and yes, even in conflict. Even when you're so mad you could spit nails, you can learn how to deal successfully with conflict. Look at this picture. What's going on here? Obviously, there's an argument of some sort. They're upset, aren't they? But do they want to get it back together? I've never spoke this before women that didn't know the answer to that one. Of course they do. And how do you know that? Well, it's obvious. Their hands are clasped. Can you tell if this is the first time that they've ever had this? Probably not. You can tell by the exhausted look on their faces. This is not the first time, nor will it be the last. But they can learn how to successfully resolve whatever is going on there. Well, this ends part 1 of conflict resolution in marriage. We hope you'll join us for part 2. Just click the access link and you will then get some tips, very practical tips, on successfully resolving conflict in everyday life. God bless you.